Okay, it looks like we're live. We'll see if anyone is responding. Hello and welcome. We want to see if we're having, if we're up here, we're having some technical issues. If you're in chat, please respond and let us know we're live. I got some people on my phone. Let's see if anyone says anything. Oh my goodness, I think I see Cynthia. Could it be? There she is. Yes. Fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Beautiful, beautiful, wonderful. All right. Now, are we live?
Yes.
We are.
We're live.
Okay. Fantastic. Wonderful. I'm so happy. So welcome everybody to This is the Medium That Rocks. Kim Scheurer. I am here today with two very lovely, phenomenal women. We have Candace Krog-Goldman and Cynthia Sue Larson. And I am just so happy that this is up and working and we're here to talk. So welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you for having us. And I'm so glad it's working.
Me too. So now we know we can start doing these things more often. So I'm going to do a brief introduction. Cynthia Sue Larson is the best-selling author of several books, including Quantum Jumps and Reality Shifts. She is degreed in physics from UC Berkeley. She has an MBA and a Doctor of Divinity. She has been on many radio and television shows such as Coast to Coast, Gaia, and One World with Deepak Chopra. Cynthia reminds us to ask in every situation, how good can it get? And I just love this, Cynthia. Welcome to the show. And is there anything I left out?
Well, I want to keep it, you don't need to spend a long time talking about me.
Yeah, we all want to hear about you. And most of my viewers, I think, know who you are. But yeah, you've had a phenomenal career. And we're going to get deeper into that. I want to kind of know where you started from. And I know that you've had mystical experiences as well as the scientific. So I find that wonderful, which is another reason why I wanted to connect you with Candace. So now we're moving on to Candace Krog-Goldman. She is the founder of BQH, also known as Beyond Quantum Healing. This modality was birthed from Dolores Cannon's QHHT method. Candace worked very closely with Dolores in life, and she still is working very closely with Dolores now in the dimension she's residing in. Candace not only practices BQH sessions for clients, but she also serves as an advisor for the forum she created for quantum practitioners and all of those interested in becoming practitioners. She hosts the Quantum Healing with Candace YouTube show in partnership with in5d.com. Welcome, Candace.
Hi, and I'm so glad to meet you, Cynthia. And this is so much fun. I'm going to have to start out by doing a little tweaks with the introduction that you gave me, if that's all right, Kim.
Yes, please.
Okay. So number one, I haven't done much within 5D for a while, not because I wouldn't if Greg and I got together, but Greg's kind of moved on into some other realms, and I haven't been doing shows for In5D for quite some time now, actually even since BQH was released.
Oh, all right.
And yeah, that's kind of an update. I mean, who knows what internet page you might have been looking at or whatever when you took your notes, and that's fine, but I wanted to keep the record straight here. Also, BQH, while my work with Dolores Cannon and her methods certainly informed me and my experience, I I would be remiss if I didn't state unequivocally that BQH is its method all on its own. It doesn't have anything to do with the QHHT or Dolores's method, except that I practiced those methods for so very long. And then after using that method for, again, a number of years, including with teaching with Dolores, I found where I could make some expansive contributions in the idea of exploration of consciousness. And so I created BQH really from the ground up. So that I would have to say I'd take exception to. It was birthed from QHHT. Certainly my experience was, certainly my love of this work was born from working with and alongside Dolores Cannon. But the methods themselves are completely separate. So thank you for allowing me to set the record.
Oh, no, thank you. And thanks for correcting me. It is important. You are my teacher. You taught me BQH, and you did roll out that method all on your own. And it was beautiful. It was wonderful the way you taught it. And in fact, my experience meeting you was basically, it was on Allison Coe's. You were interviewing Allison Coe. Allison Coe is also new to me, as the Mandela effect was. And actually, Cynthia, you came into my reality and my existence at the same time as well. All of you did. And so I just figured, I didn't think there was anything paranormal or quantum happening. I just said, well, it's people are just coming into my reality now. But I saw the video where you were interviewing Allison, and you had the sign behind you with the cardinal that said, "All healers welcome." And in the end of that video, I was very drawn to you. You were talking about Dolores, and you definitely were showing emotion. I was at least tapping into it. And as a medium, that happens with me, usually not through my television, but it was very strong. And I knew that, you had a very deep connection and bond with her, not just as perhaps student, teacher, but I knew there was a love there and admiration. So after seeing that, I immediately was drawn to finding out more about Beyond Quantum Healing. And then when I saw what you have created, not only the course that you rolled out, but the forum and all the lovely practitioners that come from all modalities, what you've created has opened doors for people to use their gifts in tandem with this. And I think it's wonderful. I can't do it justice by trying to describe what you do, which is why I kind of have you two here. I told a friend that putting the two of you ladies together is like an experiment with two chemicals, for instance, and I have no idea what will happen when I put them together, because you're both very powerful chemicals, very powerful women. So I wanted to do that. And I do have so many questions. I guess I wanted to kind of open this up by saying how I came to even have the idea of getting the two of you together. So Cynthia, you were the keynote speaker for the first ever Mandela Effect Conference in November, which was hosted in Idaho. Yes. And you and I had a little conversation which floored me. And I don't know if you remember exactly what you said to me, but it was regarding Dolores Cannon and her existence.
Oh, yes. Well, then I think I know what it is. Right, because this is interesting, because you guys are talking about Dolores. I wish I knew her. I feel like she must have been some kind of a soul sister of mine, but I never got to know her. Not only, but that's not the weird part. The really cool, interesting, bizarre part is that for me, I know she didn't used to exist, because I would carefully, fastidiously, not quite compulsively, but thoroughly consider all of the books on the various bookshelves at every bookstore I visited, along the lines of authors that talked about hypnotherapy and interviewing people between lives. In my realities that I've been through, there were two of them. There was the guy, the Michael, was it Newton, Journeys Between Lives. He talked about soul groups and so forth. And then there was the gentleman that wrote the first book, Brian Weiss, that was his name, Many Lives, Many Masters. And I was just wishing it would be nice if there was a woman doing this, but I did not know that there was. And I think that these books, I went to lots of bookstores, every one I could find that would have these books. Remember, this is before the internet was big. You have to kind of put yourself back in the 1980s.
I was there.
Yeah, I think all three of us were there, but a lot of people might not know what I'm talking about. Like, why couldn't you find that book? Well, there wasn't, and there was no Amazon, and there was no YouTube with Dolores's videos. So this is very new to me, and she's new as of a few years. But what I find interesting is some of the people like, I think Eva from Once Upon a Timeline, she was mentioning at the conference, Cynthia, you're new to me. And she knew about, I think she knew about Dolores, or was Dolores, I don't know if Dolores was also new to her, but I think this is fascinating because obviously Dolores had a huge piece of the puzzle, huge. And obviously she's super important. And I don't know that much about her. So I'm really happy that Candace is here because to me, there's nothing better than that living connection. I know books and videos are great, but when you've got someone who's just able to keep that person here and kind of like she's here, she's with us, that's like, to me, the best of all. So I'm really happy.
Candace, what do you think of that?
Dolores is so here right now. She's she's actually giddy. I mean, she's very, very present right now, and I can see her going like this, and she's just grinning from ear to ear. And as I first heard, I wrote it down. You know, she's pointing at you, Cynthia. She's a smart one, is what she was saying. She's a smart one, and then she's actually reminding me of something, of course, that I have heard for a number of years, for as long as I've been doing this work, which is more than 11 and a half years now. And that is that the same exact conversation you just had right now with us, Cynthia, about how you hadn't heard about Dolores. I hear from practitioners or fans of Dolores all the time, people who've been in this work, who've been in the therapy work, who've been doing past life regressions and have known Brian Weiss and Michael Newton inside and out.
Yes.
And they are like, how could I not have known about Dolores Cannon? So I guarantee this is an ME, but I hadn't even thought of that really until, I guess, this show. So how fun is that?
That is so cool. And that's happened to me too. People, they keep coming forward. There's a whole slew of them in 2010. That's when I got flooded with people saying, you did not exist.
Hey, so, I didn't know anything about you till all of this. And as a matter of fact, I loved Kim's introduction. You're trained as a scientist. I didn't catch that yet, because when I first was reading some of, I think it's Burt Goldman's Quantum Jumping book, I was all over those things. And that was years ago. I would have found you.
I've been doing this more than 20 years. That's
because I was really interested in this idea. And no offense, Bert, or any of your fans who are following you, but as interesting as his theories were, I didn't quite align with his energy, so I didn't really follow him very much. I would have loved to have known somebody else was looking into that and using that phrase all that time.
Yes. Oh, it's cool. I'm glad we're together now. I feel like there's something, I can feel the energy. I felt it at the Mandela Effect Conference in November. I can feel just worldwide, globally right now. We're in the middle of this huge, feels like a tidal wave of positive energy to me. And I feel like we're surfing it together. I don't know a better way to put it, but it feels like there's a huge state change happening on a global level. And I feel like the Mandela Effect is a doorway that people open their perceptions. I've been, as I explained at the conference, a lifelong experiencer of what some people might call bizarre phenomenon, because just like Diane Brandon, the author, writes about in her book, Born Aware, I do remember what it was like to be pure consciousness. I never lost that. So it's hard, in some levels, it's difficult to be in a physical body doing the human thing in this lifetime. but I don't want, this is too much to go into. My talk will be on a YouTube channel. The Mandela Effect Conference will have its own YouTube channel. All the speakers' talks will be available for free pretty soon. So that's going to be super exciting. So that's all going to be there. So I don't want to rehash everything I already talked about there. It's, but I think both of you obviously are super tuned in, and I love that. I love being with other intuitive feeling people who really get the connection and the importance of interacting with these very subtle realms that are very co-creative with our current reality, very positive, and can help us lift ourselves out of what the doom and gloom kind of stuff that can happen so easily when people just get tied up with various things. So I'm excited. So glad you guys are here. I feel like 2020 is going to be a very pivotal year. So I think things are super cool. I'm glad Dolores is with us too. Again, really glad. I'm glad she's so active. You know, some people are dead and they're a little active. They're usually really clear, like you can always talk to them. But I like it when there's someone who's like not only clear, but really there, you know. I think that's super cool.
She's still working. That's the most awesome thing. I knew nothing of Dolores, and I did know nothing of you also, Cynthia, but I did hear of you first with the Mandela effect. I think it was actually, it may have been through a Dr. Lupo. I don't know if you recall. Yes.
Terry Lupo.
Yes, he was one of the first people who was doing Mandela effect videos. And I saw you through him, and I was like, oh, okay. But yeah, I was kind of the same way. I'm like, here is a female scientist, but also understands quantum physics real well. And I could just tell by the light. You both of you ladies just have this light about you. You know, you walk into a room in person and you light it up, but that carries through the screen, you know. And I have had the pleasure of knowing a few beings like this that just shine, you know. And so when I meet people like this, not only do I want to connect to them, but I want to connect to them and kind of, you know, just see what's going on in your reality, what's happening in your world. And I know both of you ladies are privy to so much information that maybe you can't share, or you know, Dolores herself said that you can't feed a baby steak, right? So we have to go little by little, and we don't want to shock people's systems, right? You know, we can kind of look around, and just the Mandela effect on its own has shocked a lot of people.
Right.
But I know that both of you have so much information, and when we do sort of share with each other in this way, you know, we can kind of uncover these things, and at least, you know, maybe have a deeper understanding. And I know a lot of our viewers are awake already and they've had experiences, but they may not have labels for them, or they get fear rather than trying to like sort through it. You know, for instance, many people may have heard already, especially viewing this show, about the Bilocation story that happened at the Mandela Effect Conference. And I've always heard of it, but I had never experienced it. And to be a witness of this happening and see, you know, kind of how you broke it down and said, oh, this is what actually happened to you ladies. This was a case of bilocation. And I was just like, wow, you know, a paranormal thing that I've had so many paranormal events in my life that I just said, well, until I have an explanation, I know what I experienced. That's all I need to know. But having that scientific explanation as well normalizes it a bit.
Yes.
You know?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So I guess that's just what your comments are on that.
Okay, well, I can comment quickly and give Candace a chance to talk too.
But yeah,
all right. I have my questions are for you. I don't have a lot to say. I actually was thinking, if that's the case, I just need to carry a version of you around with me so that you can explain scientifically all the crazy different things that I've experienced and that my clients and students experience, because we're always going, well, I don't know. Let's see, what was that? We do the best we can, but yeah, having that science perspective is a really pretty cool thing.
It is. And this is what my first keynote talk was about at the conference. So that'll be on YouTube. It's about an hour and a half. And it starts with some of the things that were extraordinary in my life. I do mention bilocations I've experienced, teleportation kind of things. And then I talk about, after I go through and healings, all these sorts of things that may seem to skeptics or cynics as impossible, but they were my life. I mean, this is way before I even had a Kundalini awakening and got into the Mandela effect in the 1990s and wrote my book about it and talked to Art Bell about it. And Art Bell was talking about Nelson Mandela being alive again in 2001. And he talked to me about it. So I've been on his show talking about it. So I have a huge, long history, lifelong actually, with the Mandela effect, with these quantum shifts and so forth, understanding that. I like what Dolores Cannon said. That's brilliant. But I grew up in a family where I was a baby, but I was able to play with quantum reality constantly because I was still so pure of heart, because I was still mostly still in the heavenly realm, I think. And I never lost that. This is, I think, a key to, and I don't know how the quantum healing is taught, but what I notice when I interview scientists on my Living the Quantum Dream podcast, such as Jerome Busemeyer, of course, these are scientists that have a very narrow framework. So they're not going to be talking about quite what we're talking about, but because to them it's still like, whoa, you're doing what? And what the three of us know here is, oh, sure, absolutely. You can have a broken bone 1 minute, cured the next, cancer gone, all that kind of thing. We know that. But to some of the scientists who are on the cutting edge, even though they've got the pieces of the puzzle, which I love, and so I bring them on my Living the Quantum Dream channel at Dream Vision 7 Radio Network in Boston, and then it's broadcast around the world. It's free, so I'm not selling anything. This is all free, just like my YouTube is free. So, but I like to talk to the scientists because then they can say, there's definitely something going on here. We think in a quantum fashion. And Jerome Busemeyer, I quoted what he said at my keynote talk, because he's basically describing that when we're imagining possibilities, we're very much like in that quantum wave function, all possibility mode. When we make an observation, we're capable of collapsing that realm of all possibility into a particular reality. And then in my talk, I also mentioned sometimes you don't like the first one you get, like, well, that's not quite right. Let's try it again. I don't say it that way, but with you guys here, I think you know what I'm talking about. Like, well, that's close. Let's give it right back. Let's not be in fear at all. Let's go to our highest vibration. How good can it get? Really feel that joy. And then you can kind of feel something coming together. I like that one. I like to go by the feeling myself. And because I'm the Myers-Briggs INFJ personality type, which I found is the majority of Mandela effect experiencers, even though it's the minority in the populace, the general population at large. So as far as I'm just saying this by way of bilocation, perfectly normal experience to me. And it happened at our conference. It's funny to me that I talked about it in the keynote talk, but I think people took it in subliminally. And I think when people do that, and if they're ready for it, they're going to go right there, and they did. So we had two people experiencing a bilocation at the conference in the way that I would say that was definitely bilocation. Yes.
It was amazing. Yeah. And, it's interesting you mentioned the Myers-Briggs, because I wanted to bring that up. I just happened to do that myself, and I wanted to ask Candace herself. I am an INFP. So, but I know that those
are rare too. They're very rare, but not in the Mandela effect community.
Right. Do you know what you are, Candace?
I've done it before, and I know a lot of people reference this, but I didn't plug it into my brain. What's that very last letter? What's the last letter represent?
It's either judging or perceiving.
Judging or perceiving?
Right. And I believe I'm the P, because when it comes down to it, the last way I usually make my decisions, rather than going logically, I usually try to perceive where I should go. So that feeling thing, I go more with feelings than logic.
I don't know. I may have to take the test and get back to you.
That's fine. Yeah.
Wait, now you make me wonder though, what color, I want to know this now, because this is where my brain goes. What color are your eyes and what blood type are you?
My eye color is sort of a blue, and it's very Nordic. It's the Scandinavian kind of blue because I've got a lot of Swedish, Norwegian, Austrian heritage. Blood type is O, Rh negative. So there we are, universal donor, but does not have the rhesus at all.
Yep. So I have Scandinavian heritage, green eyes, and I'm O negative as well.
Okay.
Now, how about you, Kim?
Well, I have blue eyes, but they can be a little changeable to green once in a while. And I believe I'm an A negative. It's been a while since I had my blood tested, but I'm pretty sure that's what they told me.
Very interesting. Oh, gosh, I'm really fascinated to go down these different kinds of rabbit holes.
So at the conference, what I think was interesting is I walked up on a conversation that I think that was you, right, Kimmy? You were having that conversation.
Yes. So I'll kind of put it into perspective, but I definitely, we called Cynthia in because
you were talking to Dark Wolf. Yeah, Dark Wolf was talking to you when I walked up. Yeah.
Yes. So the conference was at one hotel, and a lot of people were staying at another. And this one woman and her son were actually coming to, I was booking readings during the conference, and they were coming to get a reading. But before they did this, they bumped into another attendee. She was a young woman with black hair, and they had a conversation with her, the woman with her son and this woman with the black hair, for quite some time. And it was pretty in depth. They didn't really get into what the conversation was to me, but I believe they told Cynthia the details.
They did.
So after this conversation was over, then this woman and her son came up to my room to have the reading, and nothing was mentioned during that. And then about an hour or so later, we had to go to the conference that afternoon, and the girl with the black hair was late. And so some people came to the desk where we were and were just kind of inquiring. And I had also given her a reading. So I had her number, and I had been looking to see if I could get in contact. And then she had walked in. And so everyone that sort of already had built a relationship, this conference was wonderful. It was very intimate. People were building relationships. Everyone kind of gathered around her and said, oh, we haven't seen her. And so this lady did the same thing. And she said, it was wonderful to have this conversation we had this morning at the hotel.
Yes.
And this young lady with the black hair just kind of was dumbfounded. And she said, I was in my room all morning because I wasn't feeling well.
And that's right when I walked up, because Dark Wolf was saying, like, oh, I think this is one for Cynthia, because the woman with the son was saying, like, oh, yes, we had a long conversation. So the young woman's looking like, what? And then she sees me walk up and said, I saw you. The last person I saw you in having breakfast in the dining room before. And then I went back to my room, and I spent the whole time there. And so I asked the young lady, I said, well, apparently there's a possibility that you may have been bilocating, which is what Dark Wolf had just said. That's why he said, you better talk to Cynthia. Sounds like a bilocation going on. And so I asked the young woman, because the woman with the son was talking about, here's what we talked about. I know it was you. There's nobody else. It had to be you. What we were talking about was, with all these Mandela effect changes, there can be sometimes some negative shadow stuff that comes in general in the world, and also in our personal lives. And, just finding a way to keep ourselves positive amidst all of that. That's what I was talking to you about. We had so much in common. And then personal stuff. Don't you remember? Personal stuff that turned out to be true. And the younger woman said, this is really strange. No, this doesn't make sense. I was in my room. I just had breakfast. I went straight there. And I asked her, were you daydreaming? She said, no, I was not daydreaming. And I backed up. I said, okay, hold on a minute. Maybe I'm not saying it correctly. You know that feeling when you're in a boring classroom and you look out the window and your mind wanders and you're just feeling relaxed and kind of like one with the tree and the birds. She said, oh yeah, I was doing that. I said, thank you. So you were in that state of mind. That's perfect. And what were you thinking about? And it turns out she was thinking about everything that the other woman was talking about with her. And I said, well, this is just what I've described this. This is what I gave my talk about. This has happened to me exactly like that. I'm daydreaming. For me, I'm just thinking about it. And then I come to find out other people actually experienced me. There's evidence that I was in the place they said I was. What I thought I was just daydreaming, that was real. And so at this point, the young woman is just like, whoa, you know, like how do you even take this in? Because she thought she was just daydreaming. But I think for a lot of us right now, you know, and you ladies know this. This is the reason we work on purity of heart, purity of purpose. Your thoughts, you need to be in harmony with the fullness of yourself. It's so important because at some level this starts happening, and then there you are. What you think is just a daydream. Well, let's hope they're good daydreams. You know, let's hope you're helping people. I think we are, and obviously in this case that was true. So to me, it's all a good thing. So we can kind of get more of ourselves out there. You might think you're just meditating. That's a lot of power in that, and you might actually be there on some level, and other people will know that you were. And it's happened to me a lot, so I know this happens.
Cynthia, how do you explain that scientifically at all? I mean, we talk about this theoretically a lot and then shrug our shoulders and move on, but how
Yes.
do you
Okay.
talk about the fact that somebody solidly interacted with somebody, you know?
Oh gosh, yes. Well, remember, science is getting partly there too, but in the process of solving the quantum puzzle of what's really happening. I don't know if you guys are aware that right now there is no totally agreed upon interpretation of quantum physics that everyone that says for sure is correct. We don't have that yet. But don't panic. Okay. Don't panic. Not a problem. Even though we don't have that, we do know, and there's a growing majority right now of physicists in the world who agree that you and I and everybody and everything exist in a superposition of states. Absolutely. We know it's true. We also know that quantum physics denies a single history. So these are things we know for sure, regardless which interpretation. Like, is it a holographic universe? Is it a multiverse? That's not really so important because we don't have any way to prove any of those to everyone's satisfaction yet, which is all right. That's okay. That's uncertainty. But we do know, we know for sure that if we're in that superposition of states, how might we experience it? Well, one of the ways we might experience it is exactly what we're describing. Now, you're not going to get a lot of scientists who are currently employed going public with us and saying these things, but experiencers like those of us here, we know what's happening. So we're the ones that are able to say this absolutely is happening, and we have maybe not the full mechanism to explain it, but we're getting closer. And in the meantime, we know for sure that the quantum behavior that we see is not just happening on a quantum scale, it's absolutely happening at every scale. And that's a good thing.
How can you take what you have just shared with us about bilocation and the theory of it and make any suggestions to anyone who might be watching this show, how they can positively use that information or that concept? How, you know, what's something very practical or positive they can do with that information? I know, even though, you know, the work that I do, that Kim does, that the quantum healers do, can be considered real woo-woo. I have a very practical mind.
Right.
I have a very I have a big bullshit meter.
Yeah.
and yet I am an artist and a dreamer, and I can accept all kinds of implausible things. I am both of those things. But even listening to you, I'm sitting back thinking, okay, so we know that. We know we're moving into that. How can we step into that a little more? What can we do with that knowledge that might help us?
Right. I'm working on a book right now because after that conference, it's exactly 1 month later. This is December 11th. Oh. 1 month ago exactly, I was leaving that conference and coming back to California. And I've now written 123 pages of the book that I'm working on for the Mandela Effect Society to talk about the science, the history, because a lot of people don't know the history of it. They don't know this goes back a long time, that there are traditions on Earth that have been working with this, not usually focusing on the what you might call the bizarre aspects of it, like the bilocation. That's not the goal. So if you did study with Tibetan Buddhists, monks, like in the lineage of the Dalai Lama and all of that, they would never focus on, let's get the practical advantage of bilocation. No, because it's not about that. So the daily practice is much more a spiritual path. And I get sometimes dozens of emails a week asking me how to change people's pasts, because they've seen that quantum physics does not deny, it does deny a single history, which means there are absolutely lots of histories. So if you're doing a quantum healing, you can think of it like choosing another possible past. I don't usually use the word timeline because quantum physics is nonlinear. And as soon as you get into lines, you're going linear and you're kind of mixing things. So time is not really linear. And we know from just the way space-time works together, and then you bring in frequencies, and you can get amazing experiences of the nature that we're talking about. So the frequency aspect is something we can work on within ourselves to drag ourselves out of that mud. I think a good image is in Star Wars, the movie, where Luke, his ship is in the mud. He's working with Yoda, the great little master. Doesn't even look like a master. Looks like a mess. But basically, Yoda's showing Luke, like, you can do this. You can, and really it's an internal practice. It first you stop beating yourself up. You get out of the shame and blame game and all the shoulds and woulds and coulds. And then you move into the present moment and you develop your inner key. I practice martial arts. So I've been doing that for 20 years. And I find it very useful to find that kind of focus. So for people that appeals to, finding some kind of practice, whether it's yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, just breathing. It doesn't need to cost any money. You can meditate. You might think you have no time. You have more time than you think. You can use a few minutes right when you first wake up, right when you fall asleep. You might think I have no money, no time, nothing. You can still work with it. You might think, but I have no freedom. You can still work with it. You just start where you are and start carving out more and more of your own identity space of recognizing you are pure consciousness. You can choose the fullness of your being. So those practices are really inner practices. When I write back to people that want to bring back a loved one, this is the news that I give them. And I know what they want. They want a recipe. They want to bake a cake. They want to bring their loved one back with an egg and some milk, and you set the oven to this. And then here's the bad news. We're all martial artists here. And chop wood, carry water, and it could be decades, it could be lifetimes. You might never quite make it to having bilocation experiences. Who knows? That's not the goal. So it's all about the inner practice.
Wonderful. I love that answer. I definitely see that. And I see that as the connection with all of us, no matter what your field is or how you found yourself working in the quantum field, whatever it is you do. It has to do with finding that centeredness. And I believe what I'm seeing with people that are being affected, if you want to say that, or are awakening, is they're being called to serve somehow, whatever that means for them. They realize that they're here for a greater purpose, or understanding their purpose and their passion, and somehow putting that together to help the evolution of mankind, humankind, the planet, seems to be what we're being called to do. It reminds me of Dolores's, 3 waves of volunteers. And one of the things that hit me when you first were talking about Dolores being new, one of my curiosities was, well, if she's new, could she be new because now this call is out, because now the 3 waves are waking up. And so now it's time to learn from her. Whereas a lot of us, young people, especially in the 70s, when she was doing a lot of her work, we're young people. We were just kids.
I'm getting huge goosebumps, just like angels are cheering. Yeah, keep going.
I'm so happy. I can hear her too. You know what she's saying? She's like the queen of these quips too. She's saying, yes, you're right. She goes, but it's a 2-way street. What she's doing from the other side of the veil is helping to create this.
Yeah.
Right. It's not just we're waking up. That that next realm where she is, they are also there. They are having their own expansion, and
Oh,
she's
getting
right
goosebumps
there.
again. I feel like I'm in a glass of champagne.
She's right. I've got him too. She's right there, and she's helping facilitate this.
Yes.
And another person who's doing that, I believe, and I think they're working together, is Masaru Emoto.
Yes.
I think they're just hand in hand doing that. And I get a lot of confirmation about that. But yeah, it's not just all about us. I mean, what we're doing is important work. And because we're so dense, our successes, I mean, physically dense and slower, and we've been so restricted, our successes, our expansion really does affect the other realms. And a lot of the other realms, they cheer us on, but the other realms are doing their own kinds of expansion, and we're exchanging and connecting in that way.
This is so true. I got the reason I found out about 9/11 was from some elves in a nearby forest in the woods near where I live the day before. And so I know what you're saying is true. And we often don't tune into that, but I don't know if you know Penny Kelly's work. She wrote The Elves of Lily Hill Farm, and she writes about elves. A lot of people currently talk to elves, and of course, in Scotland, I think, we have lots of places around the world that work on talking with other realms. And I think it's important to get involved in nature and feel that connection. So, what the elves told me was, I was in a big rush, kind of running through the woods. I didn't have time for a proper walk, a proper meditation. At that point, my daughters were in school and they would be home soon. It was the afternoon on September 10th. So I was basically running through the woods. And then these little elves, they were like, "We have something for you. Promise you'll open it." And I said, yeah, I'm running late. They're handing me the scroll. I can see it in my third eye. I say, "Okay, thank you." They'd never done that before or since. It was very unusual. And I thought, this is weird, but okay, I promise I'll read it tonight. But guess what? I forgot. I made dinner. The kids had homework, put them to bed. I'm wiped out. I just lie down. I think I'm resting for a minute. I'm falling asleep. And then something's pulling on my nightgown. "You promised." Like, what? Oh, right. And so I open this third eye scroll, read it, and it says the first word of it was a huge poem that they wrote. I don't remember all of it. It was beautiful. It was from them to me. I should pull it out and find it again. But the first word of each sentence lit up in gold, and those words were a coded message. And I love codes. And it said, "Always remember that you live your life for love." And I thought, what was the big rush about this? I don't get it. Like, why are they doing this? Why does it have to be tonight before I go to bed? It was so strange. But they knew, because then I get this early morning phone call, turn on your TV, and it's all into fear and all of that. But I remembered, wait a minute, I just had this extraordinary experience. And we need to collectively not be fixated on what we think is going wrong, even when it seems catastrophic. So I think that was really interesting. So that's just another, in my personal life, we definitely are working with other realms. That's just one example, but I know you know it. We all three of us know it right here. And I think maybe that's why we're coming together today, to help give people that confidence that you can tune into these other realms and that they are here for us. And I'm so glad Dolores is with us.
Me too. And thank you for that story too. Thank you, because I think that, some of us do believe, but to actually have an experience with elves or fae or dragons or any of those things, and to hear someone who is degreed and obviously is, not crazy, you're a professional, to have that experience, we know that you're giving credit to that too. So if someone were to have something like this, yes, open up your mind and realize that there are other dimensions, and it is possible and it does happen. So yeah, yes, thank you. I have to say, and I love that Dolores is with you guys. You're feeling it as well, because as I was sitting trying to come up with questions last night, I'm jotting things down, and they all were about Dolores. And I'm sitting there going, could it be that Dolores is at work? Because she's asking many questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, here's the thing about Dolores. Dolores got a lot of information. She called it them, her spirit team, her higher self, the collective that assisted her, gave her a lot of messages, a lot of them. When she really started trusting some of these messages was when way back when her husband Johnny was in a car accident. And it was a terrible car accident that he was actually a drunk driver crossed the road. He was driving one of those old VW buses, the ones that didn't even have the engine in the front. I mean, the not good idea of how to construct a car at all. Anyway, he was driving one of those. A drunk man crossed the center line, hit him head on. He was trapped for a long time before they could even get him out. When they got him out, he had hardly any blood. Got him to the hospital. That he was even alive surprised everyone. When Dolores found herself there, the conversation from the doctors was to for her to prepare herself, because they didn't even know how he was still alive right there. And she was watching the doctor, but what she was understanding was she'd had a number of sessions leading up to that day where they had told her that she would be moving to Arkansas and that a number of things were going to happen. And she believed that with all of her heart, that was absolutely going to happen. And they, at the time, I think they were in Texas, and she was looking at the doctors. She wasn't buying a bit of this, right? And I now what Cynthia is saying about, you don't even have to be dreaming. You're imagining another kind of reality, and what this doctor was saying to her just wasn't computing. She didn't argue with him or anything, but she was trusting them way more than this doctor. And that is, that's what happened. That of course he pulled out of it. He actually was primarily paraplegic after that, but lived many more years after that. But one of the things that they had told her, and this is my point, actually a long way around it, but a Dolores story on the way there. They had told her that she was going to be working. She was going to be working until she was past 100. So when everything came up to the fact where, she had the situations that led up to her eventual passing of her physical body, she was as surprised as anybody else, because she said they had told her she would be working till she's 100. Well, I say she still is, right? She still is working. So what they told her was real. I think she's just right here and she's still working. And that, that they didn't lead her astray. It was a different interpretation of what working and what the 100 meant, I think. But I think, if you take that, she died at, I guess, 83. We have a number of years left of working very closely, I think, with Dolores, where she's going to be right here and very accessible. And I've been saying to practitioners, fans alike, anybody who connects with the energy of Dolores can, and you too out there can communicate with her. She's, I think, probably and possibly the most accessible human who's on the spirit side of certainly any other one that I know.
Yes, I definitely can say that is true. As someone who's, connected people with people that have been crossed, my connection with Dolores, and at the time I did not know her, was so powerful for you, Candace. And as someone who now has been practicing BQH, I feel her before the sessions start. Sometimes the people that talk to me about sessions or are curious that do not know her start to feel her presence as well. So, and I know that you've had that experience just over and over again, Candace. So it's amazing. I think of what it must be, or may have been like for her, knowing she was going to transition with that willpower that she had, and how she didn't want to stop working. And I bet you, if she had her way, she just said, okay, give me that way to continue this, because I want to continue working over here. And I know they let her have her way. Well, I wouldn't stand in her way. And I think it's wonderful. So I do believe what you're saying earlier, Candace, and I'd love to see if that will come more to the forefront as to what is happening in the spirit dimensions, Obviously, it's kind of a wonderful, it's a great idea and knowledge for me, because I always kind of thought of myself and what I do as very two-dimensional. So once you entered my life and you, Cynthia, I started really putting that quantum into it. I realized, okay, what two dimensions, the unconscious and the unconscious, or the living and the deceased. We're talking about multiple realities. We're talking about simultaneous time. This is so much deeper than I even understood. So I think now that we're really understanding what's going on, it makes it even more amazing, and more probabilities and more questions. So I think this is the time where we all just need to gather more like this and brainstorm and talk about what it is we know and share it. So I have a question, because I've also had lots of interesting paranormal type of experiences since I have been trying to set this interview up. And I kind of wanted to throw something past both of you, because we talked a little bit about bilocation. Have either of you women heard of or experienced objects materializing out of thin air?
Yes, lots of times. Oh, you want me to talk about it?
Well, Candace has as well.
Yeah. Yes, so many times. I think one of the most, well, there's so many extraordinary moments. It's hard to pick just one, but lots of times I've had things literally appear out of thin air. Sometimes things I've been looking for. Sometimes I've seen them. Sometimes I've heard them. I had a half gallon of milk materialize in the refrigerator when we'd run out of milk, and I was standing on the other side of the door. It was closed. I'm talking to a friend, mentioning that we're out of milk, and I can hear the distinctive the sound of something falling 3 inches, which is usually when something manifests around me, it's often within about 3 inches of my hand microchakras, or very commonly, or myself or another person. So I've seen cars, keys that were locked in the trunk of a car manifest 3 inches below my husband's hands when he realized that we were in the remote part of the wilderness on a holiday 3-day weekend. We would have to call a locksmith to get the keys out of the trunk of the car. But I just said, let's meditate. Let's just be quiet for a moment. He was doing that, and his eyes were closed, and I could see the keys manifest 3 inches below his hands. My daughter lost her tooth. It fell out at school one day, and she had looked all around the room for, it was back when she believed in the tooth fairy. And so she came home crying. I said, what's wrong? And she said, I lost my tooth. It fell out at school. The teacher told me wrap it in a brown paper towel that you use when you wash your hands. And then it must have fallen on the floor with all of the other garbage or something. She doesn't know where it was. But when I put her to bed and I was writing a note that she had lost her tooth at school, I was just journaling that alone in my room on my dresser. And then 3 inches above my hand, this brand new cleaned little tooth with no blood at all, like it had been perfectly cleansed by the tooth fairy herself, and then it just falls with no blood or anything, but it's obviously my daughter's tooth. Here it is. Just so many things, and dollar bill after dollar bill showing up in my wallet when I needed money to tip a waitress. Now, I've written about these things because I want people to know this can happen. I think when we know that you don't have to have a belief structure that's so rigid, that we can open it up, then we can all experience these wonderful things. So I've had so many materializations experiences that to me it's just something that happens. But again, there's no recipe. I don't teach a recipe. It's not about recipes. It's not about you get in this mood and then I don't teach it that way, because to me it's the main thing is the spiritual integration that each of us ought to be, I mean, hopefully would be wanting to do. And then as a perk from that, you get lots of other good side benefits.
Right, I agree. It's not like a magic trick or a sideshow where it's just like the side effect of what happens when these events happen to us. Yeah.
Yes. And then one that was a really remarkable, I was doing an aura portrait for a person at a bookstore back when I was doing that. And I got to her heart and I said, "You've got a crystalline quality to your heart." As I said that, 3 inches above my hand with the paintbrush, she's watching it. We're just both watching it. A crystal fell out of the air and landed where I was painting her heart. She framed it and kept it with the crystal in it. So there's one that's been framed. Yeah.
It's amazing.
These are cool things. Yeah. Fun stuff.
They really are cool stories. I was just thinking about all the different ones that you've got excellent stories, but I have one that has this little quirky one. It has to do with doing a session. So I was in the middle of a session with a woman, and she was having just this excellent session. She was having a direct conversation with Yeshua, with Jesus, and she was the kind of client who was repeating back to me, I'm asking him this, he's saying this. I'm asking him this, he's saying this. And this woman identified as truly like, a Buddhist. She did not think of herself as a Christian. The whole idea that she was having a conversation with Yeshua was, it was humorous. It was somewhat humorous to her. She just couldn't believe it. They were talking and all of this, and they were having some different conversations. And then, now he's saying, I have a personal relationship. Of course, that's a very Christian thing to say, with him. And she's still just like bewildered about all this. And then all of a sudden she bursts out laughing. She just laughing. She's laying there with her eyes closed in this hypnotic state, but very animated, talking with Yeshua. And of course I'm like, well, what's so funny? Let me in on the joke, right? And she said that she didn't know he could be so funny because what he said was yes to her, having a relationship with them and being able to speak with him anytime she wanted. You have my number now. And of course she found that really humorous, right? And at this same time, while this was going on, at the same exact time, my phone was going off, and I used it to keep, because I can't keep a clock or a watch going. How about you ladies? Anyway, my phone seems to work pretty good. I mostly use it as a clock a lot of times, it's over here during the session, and up pops a message, and the message is from my daughter. Now, my daughter knows for sure that I'm in a session right now, and I don't know why and it was a missed call. It was a missed call, and I'm like, why is she calling? She knows darn well not to call me right now. I didn't think about it. I didn't worry about it. I didn't pay any attention to it. I did notice it was right when the burst of laughter came out, though. It was the time, right? So that was number one. And then a little bit later, I thought to myself, I was running errands. Women had left and everything. I was in the truck. I was like, oh, yeah, Lauren called. And I forgot, what did she want? The time she was in college, and she was taking metaphysics. And of course, metaphysics in a liberal arts college has nothing to do with real metaphysics. It has to do with old dead white guys yelling at each other about what they think all of this is about. It doesn't have anything to do with what we think about as metaphysics. She had to get quite far in the program to learn all this. Anyway, be that as it may, she had a great experience in college and got a degree in philosophy, but she was in the library standing there looking at some books, the metaphysical section, if you will. And she was standing there. She said she was just looking up there, and this book just comes off the shelf and it hits her in the head. Nobody's there. She's like, what even is this, right? And it hits her in the head. It hits on the floor, and it's a book that's titled, "What is God's Number?"
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
It was sacred geometry and some other things like that. And she hit it. She knew. She was like, well, I don't know what that was all about, but I know I'm supposed to check this book out, take it to mom. And I know I'm also supposed to call her right now. No matter what. She followed her intuition. It was like, call your mother right now. And so all of that was orchestrated like this, I think, so that we all participated in understanding that my client, her speaking with the Christ consciousness, my daughter and me, all together, we were quantumly entangled in this amazing way, which isn't humor a wonderful way to connect realms?
And I love the way it points out this idea to get past our preconceptions of what we think we've labeled something as, or what we think we know it as, our various linear ways of thinking, and to get into trusting this intuition. What an extraordinary experience that was. Because I think that's the key. If you're wondering, like, why, what can people get out of our discussion today? That's what I would hope they're getting, that, and a lot of these people already know it, but there's nothing like having two or more of us gathered together to be talking about it, to really feel it. And then you feel like, wow, this is extraordinary. Anything can happen.
Yes. So I want to share mine. This is the first type of experience I ever had. And I've had many paranormal experiences, but nothing materialized. So it was interesting. So I love how you said, Candace, it is a quantum entanglement, because really I'm thinking now, and it did involve a few people. So it was just a couple of nights ago, and a friend of mine came to visit. We were watching a lot of speakers on quantum theories, and the last one was you, Cynthia. We were watching one of your videos. Now, we had been up and down within the space several times. We were sitting on a large couch that's white and has pillows, but it's a white couch. If anything's sitting on it, it's going to stand out. So the whole time we were there was nothing on this couch. We were both sitting on almost opposite sides. We had some space between us. And again, several hours were going by. We talked, we chatted, we were snacking, and we were watching your video, and we had been really just listening to a lot of things about simultaneous time, multiple dimensions. And I looked down and I saw I have these large pillows. There was something sticking out under the pillow. My first thought was, this must be a tag. And then I'm saying to myself, because I'm really quite anal, I said, I pulled pillows. That can't be. And I just kind of pulled it, and it was a note. And I'm looking at this, and it was very strange. And I'm going, this doesn't belong to me. So logically, I'm trying to first dismiss that this is paranormal of any way. So I say to my friend, does this look familiar to you? Does this belong to you? And he looks at it as well and says, no, I don't know what this is. So I put it down on the coffee table. And now I'm like, okay, you understand what just happened here? So now I'm kind of jumping up and down. And I said, we've been spending all this time watching these videos about quantum things and different reality. This just materialized here on the couch. Neither one of us knows what this means. I have to talk to these ladies about it. So on the piece of paper, it says, I ran into car, and it's scrawled, printed, very strange. Next line, that was in road. And last line gives a number that may be a license plate. And then it says Lincoln plate. And I don't know if that's supposed to say license plate or whatever, but still it's quite unusual. If someone did run into your car, they may leave a note that would manifest on your couch. Usually they leave their information, not the information of the car they hit. So I'm trying to logically, my mind is saying, what is this? Is this a message from the future? Of course, right now, this little sheet of paper, my friend left right away, by the way, it scared me. But I have the note, and I have a little crystal ball that was gifted to me, and I just sat the crystal ball right on top of it because it seemed like the most appropriate place for it to go. And I also figure it's not going to disappear. If it does, that will be my next show to talk to you. But yeah, what do you think? What do you think about that experience?
Well, I like to interpret so-called real life events like dream symbols because to me, everything's talking. And when you get into that dreaming state, your life can be so much fun and you can really interact in a like a child again with childlike wonder and a sense of playfulness. So if you get a message like that, what would it mean in a dream? And I ran into a car. So if you ever do dream interpretation, what you do is you take each piece of it and then extrapolate. It's kind of like free association, what these things mean to you. So running, if you're literally running, then that's speed, it's fun, it's freedom, it's adventure. That's what it would be for me. Other people might have a different feeling with running. Car is often a feeling of our own sense of moving through life and so forth. In the middle of the road, that's so interesting because we often use that as an expression. Like what are your views? Oh, they're middle of the road. Yeah. And then this whole thing at the end about Lincoln or license, but you said Lincoln it's from Lincoln.
Yeah, I'm gonna grab that little sheet of paper.
Yeah. But so I'd be playing with that, and it's whoever found the note would be the one that I would ask to be doing the dream interpretation. But we could play with it anyway. Do you get stuff too, Candace, or what's
all the time? And I'm with you about it. Doesn't matter what happens in my realm. Whatever happens, I look at it like a dream symbol. Absolutely. And for me, almost always, car means my physical body.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Pretty standard.
Yeah.
So that's so interesting. It's like I ran into a car.
What paper is it? I want to know that.
Yeah,
Not
show
sure
us.
right now. You might be able to see it.
What is
your face a little? There you go. Now
is it torn or cut or yeah?
It's actually, if it opens, it looks like it's on an envelope. Whoops. See the back? It's kind of an envelope design.
Do you recognize the handwriting? Is it any handwriting you know?
No.
And it just showed up on the couch between you and your friend. Did your friend recognize the handwriting?
Nope.
Okay.
I also had a BQH session on Saturday, which was about 3 or 4 days prior. I did get in touch with the client. I asked her about it. I sent her a picture of this.
Mm-hmm. And number is a zip code. What zip code is that? I would look that up real quick.
I had a friend look at that. I think it's in California, but I also had another friend look it up if it was a license plate, and it was tracked to a dealership in Staten Island. It's a black Cadillac.
Ah.
If it's a car.
If it's a car. So that could be like a physical body. It's really are you the one that found it, Kim?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, it was probably about 3 inches away from where I was sitting.
Yes.
It was right underneath the pillow. Yeah.
So what would it mean to you to run into a car in the middle of the road? If you look at it like a dream, just kind of get in the groove of it. Like, never mind that it's on a piece of paper. Just get the feeling. Like I ran into a car, and like it's a song in the middle of the road,
I don't know, but I want a note now. I come on now. I want my
own. Well, I also had a friend who the friend who gave me this little crystal ball had told me that this is a new place for me. This is a new space as well as a home. And she told me that when she gave me the crystal ball, she put an intention into it that magical things would happen for me around
it. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. And she told me last night that she wanted me to find something in my couch. Now, I don't know because I already told her the story. But I said, if you put that intention there and I found this note, that's awesome. But why did you give me such a riddle? Why couldn't you have said
Are you looking for a new car?
No, but my son just got a new car.
Okay. Well, this may make more sense later on. Sometimes these things they unfold, as you know,
Well, that's what I had thought. I thought maybe this is something in the future.
It's a clue. So, yeah, hang on to it.
Right. Absolutely. So the other event that happened is another person is connected with you and with Dolores, and I don't know, Candace, you may know her as well. This is PMH Atwater.
Yes.
I love her. PMH,
yes. Only vaguely. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was a big fan of her work as well. And I basically found her because I was really investigating near-death experience. And this was before I understood anything about my own intuition and things like this. My own exploration really just started with trying to figure out what is on the other side. I already had a curiosity. Yes. And when I discovered PMH Atwater, she's one of those people, like I mentioned before, she lights up, she's one of these lights.
Yes.
And she had written a book, Future Memory.
Yes.
So I ran, as I was typing these questions, I got kind of this intuition. I don't know if it was Dolores or not, but she said, go grab Pam's book. So I went and grabbed Future Memory, and I just opened it randomly. And what I got, let me see if I can get the exact passage here. She was talking about, the page I was on was talking about her meeting with Dolores in New York. And Dolores was sharing with her the story about her and Nostradamus and simultaneous time. And I know, Candace, right, that's why I had the freak out too, just like you're having, because I know that you gave the most fabulous workshop on this in London just recently, like a year ago or so. And when I saw that connection, I was like, I'm getting the chills right again now. I'm like, okay, I have to bring this up. And I want to mention and talk a little bit about simultaneous time and how you think that's happening for us now, how our audience might be able to grasp it, how we can work with it.
Well, we'll see what Cynthia has to say, but just to give a little background and perspective. So Nostradamus, the famous cryptic philosopher, wrote these riddles, and many people have tried to. Cynthia, are you familiar with these books of Dolores's at all? She wrote a series of 3 volumes, Nostradamus volumes. There are many books on Nostradamus. Here's what all of them are, except for Dolores's. They are all people from our time puzzling through, riddling out their theories of what this guy wrote, right? Here's what Dolores's was. Dolores was simply taking down notes directly from Nostradamus. She was speaking to him in real time through a client. And not only that, not just through one client, but I think ended up being 5 or 7 clients, different clients. And at first she thought it was only happening this one particular client. And then the client was like, well, I can't do this anymore. I think it's my favorite thing. I have to go off to Alaska right now. I'm going fishing. I can't be in Arkansas doing these past life regressions with you anymore, Dolores. And Dolores is like, oh no, I'm writing this book. And anyway, she's saying goodbye, she thinks, to Nostradamus at this session. And Nostradamus is like, no, now that I know how to get a hold of you, I'll get a hold of you. And the next person's going to have more astronomy vocabulary than this one did. And so anyway, she ends up just taking dictation from Nostradamus through somebody else, through another person being in a trance state. And what's significant about that to me personally is the human interaction and memory that I have with Dolores is because a lot of her students, Nostradamus fans, read all her books, asked her about it. She would say, oh, that's just old stuff. She didn't want to talk about those books anymore. She says, we've passed those times. She was interested in her convoluted universe books. Those books were there. But, the whole idea of the kind of communication it was really fabulous. But here's where it became very, very personal to me. when Dolores passed away, it was a number of weeks later that I was back in Arkansas for her memorial, and there aren't many places to stay near where Dolores's home was and where the memorial was being. And I actually was invited to stay in Dolores's home on her sofa, And let me tell you, I didn't sleep a wink that night because of all of the information and all of the things that came. But one of the things by far that happened that was so significant to me was these were dreams, but they weren't dreams. You know what I'm talking about, right, gals? I mean, I leapt from the dream state into this altered experience, but it was no dream at all. Dolores came out of her office, her writing office, into the little room where I was laying on the sofa, and she was with this man. And, and I'm sitting up and I'm looking at them, and she says, Candace, I want you to meet my friend. This is Nostradamus. And he just kind of bows at me, and I'm just, floored, of course, with what's going on here. And she said something to me that has never, ever left my mind. And she says, what's important about my books was how the communication took place. The information doesn't mean a thing. How the communication took place, and then poof, that was it.
Yeah, I know that. I can feel that from Dolores, because when I tune in, I never got to know her, but when I tune into her, she's like, you didn't miss a thing.
It's exactly
right. She's like, you got me right now. She's so here, I love her energy.
Yeah, she is. She's got terrific energy, and
she's like a kid, She's like
a sense of humor too. So these big smiles on our faces, it ramps up her energy as well. So all of that about simultaneous time, she had a clue, she had a hint. Some of her work got to him. He contacted her in a couple of different ways. One was through scrying. Right. Sometimes I think it might have been a ball, but I think it was actually a big flat piece of obsidian rock.
Right.
He would look into, and at other times he would just do it just by meditation or by daydreaming. But what's really, really fascinating, if you go into some of his books and some of the things where he was reading, he wrote his books with passages saying his books were written by spirits from the future. I think that was Dolores Cannon.
Yes.
And that is also, I'm getting the goosebumps again. Yeah.
Pam was saying too, which I find really interesting. And Candace, so you've never seen any PMH Atwater's books either?
I've not read them. I mean, I'm familiar with her name and vaguely, but no, I'm not. And I'm taking all of these notes over here, all these things. I'll add it to my pile of things that I'm interested in. I'm never understood people that they're like bored. I'm like, I got so much I want to do, see, experience.
No, PMH is super important, not just for the near-death experience, but like I say in my keynote talk at Idaho last month, she was the first one to really coin the term reality shifts. I know we're using the phrase Mandela effect, but that was her phrase from the book Future Memory, which I didn't find for a few more years. But then when I found it, it's like, oh, thank goodness, there's someone else who gets this. So she was the first one that was really sharing these accounts and experiences. Now I need to go back and read that book again, because somehow I missed the whole Dolores Cannon connection. I don't know how I missed it. This is what's so weird. It's like when I miss somebody like Dolores Cannon, it's like there was no trace of it, and now it's everywhere. Yeah, I know Future Memory.
Future Memory,
But it's almost like the book changed or something. Like I would have picked up on that thread. Like, what's this? Dolores Cannon? Who's that? And so you see what I'm saying?
I absolutely, I absolutely do. And I was just as surprised as you. I'm going to have to figure out, I have another mystery now, but I pulled this book out. I think it's the only one I have of her. I submitted a story to her that she did in this book, but now I can't find it.
That happens.
The other thing that I was
in Future Memory, are you sure it's that one? And because I submitted a story and it went in a different one. Okay.
It's possible. So that's what I'm going to do. So I actually emailed her about it, and I kind of, she's heavily, she's got all of her people because she's so You've been doing
She's busy. Yeah.
And I figured I wouldn't hear back right away. And then she's so sweet. You know, she got back to me in an instant message this morning. And I didn't really get to give her much detail on anything. I think I just kind of said, I'd love to chat. And then she said something like, well, I have this site and this site you can get to know me on. She's like, and I also make oatmeal cookies. She's just so sweet, you know? And then I explained to her very quickly, you know, I said, I'm having a show today. If you happen to not be busy and want to check in, but, you know, I kind of let her know a little bit of what was going on. So
you can ask her, are your ears burning? We're talking about you.
Exactly. But yeah, I was getting that intuition when I was preparing for this, that she's a key person. Yes. That we also connect with.
Getting the goosebumps again. But I love this thing about Nostradamus. That's amazing. So Candace, you were teaching a workshop on it. Is there something about this simultaneous time that you feel would be useful for people to really understand, you know, from your, because you're so tuned into it, even talking with Nostradamus, with Dolores Cannon, you know, clearly you're in the groove with this.
Well, I think the biggest thing, you know, Dolores and I had a lot of things in common about the way we approached clients. I think I felt a great affinity with, you know, first and foremost, the idea of assisting somebody else is simply just the idea to help you have the best life that you can have, that contains the most joy, the most peace and balance, etc. And so the idea of simultaneous time, I liked it when you said before about timelines. You know, you're right. Using the word line creates this and it's whatever. As a matter of fact, I'm in the middle of writing actually 3 books. I have 3 in process. They're all over the place. They're a mess. But one of them I've actually have a working title of it, and it's actually called A Point in Spherical Time. You know, it's the idea of, you know, because it's maybe it too is too limiting, but it's the next step up from a line, right? Anyway, a point in spherical time. But the practical side of it, I think, would be this. So many of us as humans carry around deep regrets, shame, hurts, traumas, neural pathways that we've worn, you know, so deeply grooved into our mind about things that have happened. And if you really, really think about simultaneous time and all these different things we've talked about today, you know, all the different timelines and the different ways and different perspectives you can look at time and how big consciousness really is, well, then you don't really have to even worry too much about what happened in the past. It's not the biggest thing. Just like Dolores is saying, don't worry about any of that. You didn't miss any of it. Everything is now. You've heard that before. Everything is right now. But if you think about time being simultaneous in that way, the past just isn't that big of an issue. It informs where you are right now. It can inform you right now, but it doesn't have to be as big of a burden as humans tend to make it. I think that may be one way of looking at it. And the same thing with simultaneous time. Again, thinking about some things that Cynthia has said, this joyful, childlike, whatever you can do, look, be, read, whatever, that can bring you to that. It doesn't matter what it is. If you can create that emotion, that in you, and you keep this idea of simultaneous time in with you, and that you are always in motion, but the next now moment, doing all of that from where you are right now brings you more of that joy, brings you more of that passion, brings you more of that joy. And things aren't as far away as you think, you know, as far as possibilities, and they're easily sloughed off as far as the past. You know, time is not the burden that it need be.
Oh, I love it. Thank you. That's beautiful.
Thank you. That was a great question. This has been so much fun talking with you two. I definitely want to do it again someday.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely. This has been wonderful. I guess I'll just come to a close with I really like, Cynthia, one of the things that you said in one of your videos that I was watching recently, you kind of broke down the possible explanations for the Mandela effect. And I bring the Mandela effect up because I know a lot of our viewers have come to this through that experience. And it is bigger than the Mandela effect. We understand that, but it's kind of our wake up moment. So you had run down the list and you said possible explanations are false memories and confabulation. The second would be conspiracies. The third, probably this is evidence of a simulation. Or the fourth is awareness of changes in consciousness. And you believe in basically the fourth is what this is about, which I do as well. And I assume also Candace is also on board with that idea with the work that we're doing.
Well, even more than that, one thing I mentioned at the conference in my keynote talk was, and I numbered them differently, but I went through, the first one I think was simulation, because Elon Musk is such a proponent, and you're going to hear that from our top leading technologists, like, oh, we're simulating things, and that's what this is. But with that one, and with the conspiracy one about CERN and the scientists running amok and all these others, it doesn't really matter which of these theories you look at. You can look at quantum physics and quantum phenomena happening on every scale. Every single one of these theories, when you go just a little further, you ask more questions, like with the simulation, like, okay, so it's a simulation, then what are we simulating? And who is doing this simulation? So in other words, when you ask those questions, the emperor has no clothing, and suddenly we're right back at consciousness again. And that's going to happen with all of these theories. It's even the physics one. You go to physics, like, okay, so we've got quantum physics of phenomena happening at every level of reality. And again, the key has to be consciousness there as well. So whichever one you're picking, it's going to go the same place. I love that. But at the same time, it doesn't exactly give us the answer. It really is a rabbit hole, the consciousness rabbit hole. But that's my favorite place. I mean, I love consciousness. I love the fact that if we think we've got it pinned down, it gets loose because it never was pinned down to begin with. The way I described it also in my keynote talk was that special case of the so-called material reality that we tend to think is all there is. We think our senses are all there is, that we think that we can trust our five senses and that they're showing us exactly what's out there. But there's some bad news here or good news. It's just news. But actually the senses that we have are interpreting everything around us. And this is why I interviewed Donald Hoffman on Living the Quantum Dream, because he describes sensory information. We interpret everything. We're not even directly getting photons of light. Everything goes through these buffers and filters, and very much like throwing a file away on your laptop, desktop. It's just representations of what's out there. It's not the real thing. So even our five senses are not real in that sense. And what does this mean? It's huge. It means that consciousness is extremely fundamental. It's primary. And I think the biggest clue we've got is when we look at quantum physics and we recognize quantum logic is everywhere. And it's the universal set, the classical simple case that we tend to think is all there is. That's a very special case. And it's real. It's just as real as everything else, but it's very limited. And the actual big world is way bigger. It's like that quantum imaginal realm surrounds the very tiny, thinking that it's just your five senses and only what you measure matters and all that stuff. There is such a thing as objective reality, all these old assumptions that were part of the pre-quantum revolution. And then when you get to quantum logic, quantum consciousness, pow, it opens up. So that's what consciousness means to me. It's a very subjective experience. We've seen that in laboratory experiments this year in 2019 in Edinburgh, Scotland, Austria. We actually witnessed the double slit experiment happening with two simultaneous observations at the same place and time, showing that both observers are correct and they saw two different things. And that's how reality works. And I love that. So we're definitely in a whole new world. We're not in Kansas anymore.
You hear that, Candace?
I still am in Kansas.
Okay, you're excused.
It's interesting though that you should say that, because that whole, the Wizard of Oz, the symbology there, I think about it all the time. I mean, my God, the man behind the curtain, and,
Yep.
and there's no place like home, and
Yep.
and believing in yourself, and I'm just all that stuff. So, I mean, there's a real reason why I'm here. This has been amazing. What a complete delight to have spent part of this afternoon with you ladies. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Candace, as well. And thank you also, Cynthia. I want to thank you both. This is an early Christmas and birthday present for me. Just having you guys. I can already say I know that the people that are watching you now and will be watching you are going to be delighted. I think this conversation went really, really well. I think we're only scratching the surface of where we can go. I'm really looking forward to 2020. And I know you ladies have some things coming up. So I'll just wrap up with letting you tell us, although you briefly mentioned some things that you're working on, tell us what you're working on and how people might be able to get in touch with you.
Sure.
Cynthia?
Yeah.
Or?
Okay. Yeah. My website's realityshifters.com. And I know I'll be at a festival in Sweden in July, the No Mind Festival. I also will be at another Mandela Effect conference or conferences, not sure the dates and places, but we have a YouTube channel and a website, and all of the talks will be posted there at mandelaeffectconference.com and the YouTube Mandela Effect Conference channel. And so that's the main stuff that's happening besides the book I'm working on. Never written a book this fast. I'm working with the spirit of the book, clearly. This one has a very strong spirit. That shows me 2020 is an amazing year because it's just coming through with so much positive energy, this book that I'm working with. And that's exciting. I love seeing that. So I'm feeling very optimistic and positive about the future, and really about this community that I feel so grateful to be part of, with especially the two of you who really personify and embody the true spirit of consciousness and awareness of being in service. So thank you both. Such a pleasure.
Thank you, Cynthia.
It's so great to meet you, Cynthia. Well, okay, so my main website is, it's also a directory. It's a worldwide directory for healers of all kinds, way showers of all kinds. It's called quantumhealers.com. That's the directory. Through that directory, members who are listed there can participate in a community forum. That's been running for 11 and a half years. Used to be Dolores Cannon's forum until she passed away. We became independent and expanded our base. And what's coming up with me? Well, of course, the Beyond Quantum Healing course, which you can also find out about at quantumhealers.com. That's available. Information's there available. Learn how to do that method, provide that service if you are so guided. And what else is coming up for me? I'm actually going to be an expert speaker at an online event called The Alchemy of Ascension. That's going to be a lot of fun. I believe that begins the 1st of February in 2020. And then in April, on the 15th, but that whole week, the April 15th of 2020, we have Worldwide Regression Day, Worldwide Regression Week, and April 15th is Dolores Cannon's birthday, so we celebrate her. We're going to have a lot of excellent and fun speakers, events, and interesting activities that's going to revolve around that day. So those things are coming up in my near future, and I'm with you, ladies. I think 2020 is going to be a spectacular year.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. I just have to say, because something new just came in, I actually got a return message from PMH Atwater. So her ears were ringing. And she just says, I will be unable to join you, but perhaps in the future, I would love it. I did know and loved Dolores. Oops, what else did she say? Okay, I did know and loved Dolores. Didn't always agree with her, but loved her anyway. She was a grand dame who built a business from scratch, taught many, and pursued her passion with grace and vigor. How could you not love her? So I thought those were beautiful words to leave for our Dolores.
That's wonderful. Just perfect.
All right, ladies. Well, thank you so much. Have a wonderful holiday and new year, and we'll be talking again in 2020.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.